This is a demonstration of the import and validate workflow. So the first thing that we need to do is download the template Excel spreadsheet. So if we go there and download this, right, and then we need to open the import and validate web app. So once that's loaded, we can select the import and validate web tool, select the file that we downloaded, and then we need to run. So what this is doing is it's loading in that Excel, the data in that Excel file. It's then converting that to a point data set using the OS Grid Ref East and OS Grid Ref North columns on that in that file. It's then doing the validation that we've applied, and then anything that passes or has warnings will then move on to the next step. Anything with errors will stop at that step. All errors and warnings will be recorded in a file that we can download at the end of this process. So the next step after it's passed the validation or just has warnings, it will then the data will be loaded into the occupation table. So all of the data will be loaded into the occupation table if they're occupation records, and after that, any site or land or building data, what happens is the land registry polygons and the OS master map polygons are loaded in, and then they're intersected with those points to give us the sites for the land registry data and the buildings and the land for the OS master map data. The reason this takes a little bit of time is it's got to load in all of that land registry and OS master map data in order to do that intersect. So you can see this. There's lots of logging going on here. That's just because it's currently set to info logging. We can set that just to warning or error logging, so you don't see all of that data, which is probably not relevant to the end users, but it's useful for development purposes. So obviously there are 7 records in that template Excel spreadsheet that we uploaded. So what we'll get at the end of this process is we'll get a summary of the total number of records loaded in, any errors and warnings, and how many actually were appended to the output feature layers. Each time this tool is run, the feature layers are truncated and the data is loaded afresh, just the data in that Excel spreadsheet. So this is just a scratch feature classes that this is all going to. So the data won't build up in there each time it's run. So hopefully this should be completed soon. And we can see the output of the actual tool. There we go. So if we just move the map, we can see that the data's been loaded in. We can see the attribution, etc. We can edit them, we can delete them, etc. And then so we can see there are a total of 6 records in that Excel spreadsheet. 6 of them had warnings, 2 of them had errors. 4 occupation records were loaded into that table, and 2 land features were imported and 7 site features were imported. It's probably 7 because I imagine that there was more than one land registry polygon intersected for one of the points or some of the points. So that's why we've got more site features than we have input records. So if you have a look at the that failures file, open that. So this file is essentially the same data as was in the Excel spreadsheet the template spreadsheet that we uploaded, with 2 additional columns. So that's this validation message column that shows us any warnings that were encountered during the processing. So DEC expiry date has passed. So if we have a look and try and find DEC expiry date, there we go. We see that, yeah, it is in fact the end of August 2019. So that has passed. And at the other end of the table, we can see all any errors that were encountered. So we see occupation ref not numeric or less than 1. So we scroll back and try and find the occupation reference column. There we go. We see that that's 0 and that's A. So that's why those two have failed. So that's the import and validate workflow.